Welcome to Strategy and Tragedy. I'm your host, Stephanie Melodia, and if you are a budding entrepreneur, a first-time founder, or scaling your business, then you are absolutely in the right place. And particularly with this episode specifically, I cannot wait to interview Rob Law, serial entrepreneur, most famously known for being the founder of Trunki, the children's luggage brand. Rob, welcome to Strategy and Tragedy.
Thanks for inviting me.
All right, so I'm sure you're sick of it at this point because obviously this first occurred over a decade ago, but we do need to kickstart your story with the Dragon's Den fiasco. So to bring everyone up to speed really quickly, you got pulled apart on Dragon's Den, quite literally, where Theopophetus, one of the dragons, literally pulled apart one of your products. I don't know if it's your prototype or one of the actual suitcases there on the show, aired on national TV around the country. Obviously must have felt horrible, but take us back to that moment. What was going through your mind when that was happening?
The turning point in the den from a good pitch to things tumbling downhill out of my control was when Theo got a little bit too aggressive with my pink Trixie suitcase.
I did not expect the strap to break so easily, I've got to be honest.
Yeah, it was almost 2 decades ago now. It was
2 decades
2006.
ago.
And it was a very weird out-of-body experience being there in front of the dragons, but also, on reflection, just having no control over the car crash that was happening in front of me. And I just couldn't understand why it was such an issue. It was a production sample, and the toe strap, if you pull it hard, the original plastic clip did bend a bit. And he saw it bend, so he thought, I'll pull it as hard as I can, and it popped off. It didn't break, it just popped off. And I was like, well, if that's a problem, although I've just turned Richard Farley around the studio, that can be made stronger. And they just went absolutely wild at me. Like, Theo said, what was it? You shouldn't come on here with problems that can be solved. It's like, well, yeah.
Pretty much the definition.
That's the definition for all products and businesses. You get something out, you find something wrong, and you tweak it.
That must have left such a sour taste in your mouth with the whole Dragon's Den show.
Yeah, but then it carried on. Peter Jones said, "You think you got something? I tell you, you don't. Your business is worthless. Your brand's worth nothing." I was like, what? And it was. I had just started trading, but I had a brand name, had a product. I had something to get started. But yeah, when the cameras stopped rolling and we're in there for an hour and a half, whatever, I was at the top of the steps and I thought, oh, that's a bugger. I haven't got any money, which I really needed, a bit of mentoring. And by the time I got to the bottom of the stairs, I was thinking, oh, Christ, I wish I'd invented a time machine and not ride on suitcase. This could be quite damaging to the business if it ever airs.
Yeah.
The BBC said they'd give us 6 weeks notice. The season 3 starts airing, no word from the BBC. Halfway through the season, no word. So I'm thinking, I've got away with this. But just to make sure, I went down to local newsagents, picked up the Radio Times just to check. And one day I was in there, what was it, Tuesday night, BBC 2, 9 o'clock, and it said, wheelie rubbish, Dragon's Den. The colour drains from my face. I was like, oh. Thought I got away with this.
What a setback. But of course, this is one of many setbacks, which is one of the many reasons that makes you a fantastic guest on a show called Strategy and Tragedy. So we are going to recount some of those. But what I'm aware of is that you did have a deal lined up. So obviously there was that gap between recording that show and it actually airing.
Yeah.
So obviously you've taken a hit emotionally. That's such a blow to your ego, your self-confidence and all the rest of it. You had a deal lined up. But then what was the damage after the episode actually aired on TV?
Well, I didn't have a deal with Dragon's Den.
No, there was a separate... Did you have a separate customer deal?
My first customer was actually the Museum of Modern Art in New York. And they had seen a design blog where I posted a press release. So I'd sold 600 to those guys and started exporting internationally. I was finding it quite hard initially in the UK. None of the high street retailers would take my call. They kept passing me around different departments and no one wanted to take the risk of the Trunki. The classic startup challenge I had was luggage buyers or luggage manufacturers thought it was a toy buyers and toy manufacturers thought it was luggage, and no one would take the product on initially.
This was one of the other things I wanted to come to you about, which was that repositioning, going from a toy to luggage. So let's just talk about that, because how did you manage to successfully kind of position yourself in a way that consumers could easily understand?
Yeah, well, it was a long startup journey from idea while I was at university in 97 to actually starting trading in 2006. So this 9-year journey of initially rejection from manufacturers, then graduating in product design, working in Taiwan, New York and Australia. So I did the whole traveling thing, and then came back in 2002. I found a startup toy company who were really keen on the idea, so I licensed it to them. And over a 3-year period, they just had one customer in the Middle East, and Trunki had never been to the UK, to Europe, to the US.
Wow.
So I was really frustrated by their lack of success. They ended up going into voluntary liquidation. During that 3-year period, I took a job as a design consultant in Bristol, and my largest customer was Unilever. And I was inventing all these products with these big name brands like electronic deodorant cans for Lynx, or Axe as they call it in Europe, electronic devices to put more bleach down the toilet for Domestos, and just all this junk that people didn't need. And I was really kind of struggling to get out of bed in the morning. Ever since I was 14, I wanted to be a product designer. I was now at the peak of my career, and I was completely disillusioned.
Wow. But Trunki's still in the background.
Well, Trunki was with this.
Trunki
was with this license with the toy company, and then when they phoned me up in October 2005 saying they were going into voluntary liquidation, couldn't represent Trunki anymore, I very quickly kind of thought, well, actually, here's an opportunity for me to have a go myself. I now know about the power of branding with my work with Unilever, and maybe it isn't a toy or luggage. It could be marketed as a lifestyle brand to parents.
Interesting. So this almost gave you an opportunity to kind of reinvent Trunki, and it's almost like the Renaissance after that, the phoenix from the flames. I have to ask, I mean, we haven't even gone that far into your journey yet, but already I need to ask, like, where does this fire come from for you, and specifically with Trunki, because you've had so many like false starts and failures and setbacks, you know, Dragon's Den again, I'm sure you're sick of talking about it at this point, but like obviously that's one of the most famous things as well. It's one of many setbacks. What was it that kept you going? Like, where did that belief in this children's luggage brand come from?
Well, it was more just a side hustle and a slow burn. So it wasn't, I wasn't waking up every morning thinking, right, I'm going to make it work today. It was just like, let's try and find a home for it. And at the time, I didn't want to run a business. I just wanted to be a product designer. So in the earlier days, it was just give it to someone else to do, and then I could become a product designer, which is what I trained to become. And then after, as I said, kind of struggling to get out of bed in the morning, I was then like, this could be an opportunity to have a go at. And there were many other challenges. We had the hand luggage ban of 2006.
Exactly. Yeah, I was going to come on to that as well.
So that was coming home just before the summer after working down the warehouse fixing up some stock. The German World Cup was on. I wanted to see how England had got on. So I turned the telly on and there was a news flash. And the news presenter was saying the government have foiled a liquid bomb threat. And as a result, they've decided to ban hand luggage. Colour drains from my face, and I'm like, what? So the very product I invented, I'd taken 9 years to get to market, was now banned from its primary and fundamental use of being used as hand luggage.
And so how did you overcome that?
So that challenge was really around kind of quickly realising what can I control and what can't I. So phoning up Heathrow, Department for Transport, Virgin, BA, anyone I could think of, was very clearly a waste of my time, and I couldn't influence anything there. So I quickly learnt what I could control, and that was pivoting the marketing message, talk about Trunki being used for staycations. I developed a cow print, Frisian cow Trunki for that messaging, but also international was really taking off. So I was exporting to the US, to Japan, Australia, and most of those markets didn't have the ban, so it was kind of leaning into that and pushing international.
Yeah, incredible. So I know I'm picking up on your story already that like you're very much product designer first, right? Like more of this creative, you've got an idea, you want to put it out there, not so much an entrepreneur, at least assuming that label, at least in those early days. You sort of mentioned like giving it someone else, you turn it into a business, but ultimately you became the man to lead that. What do you tell yourself like in those tough moments, those setbacks, like when it would be easier to go and get another job as a product designer. Quick one, so sorry to interrupt. I'm sure that you are on the edge of your seat listening to this interview, at least I hope so. I'm so aware of all the other podcasts that are already out there, so the fact that you've decided to tune in and listen to this one is not lost on me. If you can just go that one step further and hit that follow or subscribe button, doesn't cost a thing, takes 2 seconds. Now is your chance to do that. It means so much. Really appreciate your support. Thank you so much. Now let's get back to the interview. When it would be easier to go and get another job as a product designer?
I don't know, for some reason they don't seem that insurmountable to me at the time. I guess I'm thinking about having faced quite a few challenges in my personal life as well. It's kind of not that big a deal, that there will be a way through this. I've just got to face up to it as quickly as possible and move on. I've kind of learned that setbacks can be reframed as superpowers. So kind of facing into these quickly kind of helps you get over them if you can use your energy wisely and move on and carry on. And you might be pivoting, you might be being redirected somewhere, but it's not actual failure, it's kind of moving forward.
Yeah, I love that. I think where some of us spend maybe too long on LinkedIn or too long with our head down, it can feel like actual failure. And I think getting that perspective in those moments is so vital. You dangled the kind of personal thing there lightly. So if anyone doesn't already know, you suffer from cystic fibrosis.
Yeah.
So was that what you were referring to? And if so, how has that helped you to exercise your resilience muscle?
Yeah, so that is probably the foundation of my resilience. Being born with this is the most common genetically inherited disease that affects your lungs and your digestive system. But in the late 70s, when I was born, the average life expectancy was lucky to make it to double figures. And spent most of my childhood with my twin sister in and out of hospital, strapped to various ventilators and inhalers and loads of medication. But then as the science improved, life expectancy improved, so we made it to teenagers, and then the goal was like 30 was an opportunity, we might make it to 30. But sadly my sister passed when we were 16, which was devastating, but it taught me an incredible life lesson about life is short and to make the most of it and to kind of face into the challenges and hurdles and just make the most of my life. Nothing was going to stop me from doing what I wanted to do.
Yeah, I can't even begin to imagine. Like, how do you process that? Like, something that, again, like, these aren't real failures. Like, we're talking about life and death, like, easily puts things back into perspective. But unless you haven't gone through that yourself personally, what can we borrow from you?
Well, I think part of it was not actually processing it, which is not necessarily a healthy thing, but I internally processed it to try and give me a real focus. And I think before Kate passed, I wasn't that driven. And then afterwards, then I just wanted to make the most of everything. At university, my mates called me the Duracell bunny because I just party hard, work hard and just live life to the full. And then I focused that energy on the business. And yeah, initially it wasn't about making any money. It was just about having success with the product. I wanted to see it on the shop shelves in the UK. That was kind of my first goal really with the brand. Then we got into the UK, then it was getting into other markets, then it was kind of getting to £1 million turnover, and it was conquering the world. So
Incredible.
It kind of grew and grew and grew.
Well, I did want to shift gears and talk about some of those highs and not only the lows, as much as we started with getting pulled apart on national TV and the luggage ban, and then of course the kind of the personal.
Well, I think we learn more from our failures than from the.
Well, Rob, you are a perfect ambassador for strategy and magic. That's very much the purpose of the show, right? Is like to share what are the lessons learned from some of those mistakes that have happened along the way. So before we do move on to those highs, what are some of those key lessons that you can share with our listeners from those downers?
Well, I think it's reframing setbacks into them being superpowers, and that's where you succeed. I mean, in business, we're always talking about kind of success, creativity and momentum. But I think behind that quite often is rejection, failure and setbacks.
Yeah, 100%.
So really kind of understanding that on LinkedIn, quite often it's all just a bit too glossy about how
100%.
successful everyone's been.
Right.
But behind all those successes are lots of anxiety, lots of setbacks.
100%. There is a fantastic...
And actually, I'm finding you get a lot of traction now on that platform where you're really honest and open and talk about the things that haven't gone well.
Yeah, 100%, absolutely. There's this fantastic visual, an image is worth 1,000 words. And it's got, if you imagine kind of 3 squares of dots. The first square of dots are all multicolored. The middle one is just one of the colors and everything else grayed out because that's the only thing you're showing. And then the last one is they're all that same color because that's all that you're showing people. So that's therefore what you then kind of extrapolate out to the rest of their life. You think that that is the reality. And I think that's how social media has really warped our perception, and especially something as tough as entrepreneurship. And of course, the LinkedIn humble bragging doesn't help with that. I do just want to connect back, before we do talk about some of those highs and amazing achievements that you had, I do just want to connect it back to that motivation as well that kept driving you. Because when I asked you before, it was like, it was kind of a side thing. It was a slow burner. It was kind of in the back of your mind. It took a long time to sort of get it to market. But there must have been a point where it's like, okay, we're all in on this. We need to kind of get that firepower. How then, like, what was why did you want to put all your eggs in a basket of children's suitcases?
I just thought I'll give this a go. I'll quit my job once I've got stock to sell, and if it fails, at least it'll be an amazing MBA in business. But actually, growing up, I never wanted to be a business person. My dad was a businessman. Amazing. He ran a retail interior design business, and his company designed all the Ashley shops and things. But he was a workaholic, and growing up I was like, right, I'm gonna enjoy life. I'm gonna party hard and experience what the world has to offer, and travel the world, and did quite a bit of that. But then as soon as I found my passion, I became a workaholic. So he put me off the idea of being a business person, now entrepreneur. But then I found my passion and kind of became one.
Your own kind of definition of that. And why children's suitcases in particular? Like, of all of the things to put your time and energy and effort towards, why was it, especially in those earlier kind of days as well? Like, did you have market validation in a more practical sense, or was there more of this like deep belief and vision that you had for Trunki?
Well, I tested the prototype out in primary school, so I had quite a lot of validation there. Friends and family, but I was trying to kind of not listen to that.
The mum test, right before the mum test was written.
Well, more the kind of slightly impartial. It wasn't impartial feedback.
Yeah, exactly.
And then when I posted about the design on these blogs and started getting inquiries, that was kind of quite significant validation that I started trading internationally almost overnight. So then it was like, well, let's give this a go and double down. And my mum thought I was a bit crazy to quit my job and do this, but I just thought, let's have a go. What have I got to lose? I was in my late 20s. So there was very low risk.
Yeah, exactly. You're in a stage in your life where you're able to take more of those bigger bets, right? So,
but the funny thing was that Trunki's now very well known, but at the time when it came to hire my first person after about 6 months of trading, one person applied for the job.
That's hilarious.
So they got it.
I hope they got the job. What was the role of that first hire?
It was kind of like an operational role, a bit of admin, a bit of ops.
Bit of everything, classic kind of startup, amazing. So you find product market fit eventually. So you've got a bit of this, like the repositioning, the early market appetite, things are growing. What were your growth levers in those early days?
It was all about exporting, and the international trade shows I was going to was where we were really getting a lot of traction. And in a couple of these industries, it turned out that it was actually the baby industry that was the best fit for us. So the kind of mother cares, the baby stores, the baby departments were mainly where we ended up. In fact, the luggage industry had a very different margin cascades. The retailers wanted 60% margin, whereas the baby market wanted 40. Wow. So we could actually make it work price point wise in that market, along with toy, but luggage was always a real struggle.
What crosses my mind is, given we're turning back the clocks around, a couple of decades at this point, right? And even in your story, I've picked up on details like popping down to the newsagent and flipping through the Radio Times and all these kinds of things, right? This is, of course, pre-social media. This is like D2C e-commerce. How much of the time that you were in was a help or a hindrance?
Well, actually, it was the first way I could sell Trunkies was actually a custom coded e-commerce site. So yes, way before Shopify. Right. But I had met a techie in Australia and convinced him to program me an e-commerce site, and he'd earn a commission on sales. Wow. It was right at the start of social media. So Facebook, each Trunki had its own Facebook account. So back then we had about 4 or 5. And then I suddenly realised this was going to be hard work to have a Facebook account per Trunki. We ended up launching about 65 different versions. So, and then it became just the one account.
Wow, such
But
early
it
days of it
was
all,
the very
isn't it?
early days, yeah.
How much of the timing do you attribute to the success that you had?
I think the timing was more around the budget airlines and the low-cost travel. That kind of really was the biggest lever that a lot more people were able to go off on those cheaper holidays.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And we're always quite a small team for the size of the persona of the brand. And I think the ability for the cases to advertise themselves in airports was probably our greatest marketing gift.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. What would you, I know I'm kind of skipping ahead a little bit because I do want to kind of chronologically, finish the Trunki chapter, but I know that you advise other entrepreneurs and startups these days as well. I know of course it depends on the specifics and so many other variables, but if there were a younger Rob sat across the table from you now who's got a similar idea and he's launching his business with Meta, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, all of these social media channels that we have today that you didn't, bearing in mind, yes, it's democratized entrepreneurship and made it so much frictionless and lowered that barrier, but of course it has to everyone else, right? And so it's increased the competition and the noise. So what would be your advice to that younger Rob now?
Well, I think we're actually 10 years too late for the whole D2C play, whereas like the Harry's Razors guys and everyone, the cost of advertising on Meta or Facebook was much lower.
Yeah.
Now it's incredibly expensive. Unless you've got a customer lifetime value to achieve, it's really not worth investing in those channels.
Yeah.
And D2C is really challenging. What we've learned and what I also do is focus the business on Amazon. Amazon's a kind of a closed ecosystem that rewards the adverts, whereas Meta and Google don't care if your adverts convert or not. Amazon do. So you can build this flywheel effect. And Amazon is not just the UK or the US, it's Europe as well. It's the biggest marketplace in France and Germany. So Amazon can give you a great tool to be able to get heard and get sales. Yeah. So it's almost seeing it as a marketing tool because the margins are quite slim. But with our new business, we're Amazon only to sort of start off with. And we had lots of success with Trunki with Amazon, and kind of in the UK, it kind of built itself off the back of Dragon's Den. So Dragon's Den was the best thing that happened for us. It kind of catapulted us into the public psyche.
Interesting.
But in Europe, it didn't. And actually advertising on their platforms about not just the suitcase, but our other products really, really worked. Yeah. And actually off the back of that, me and my brother founded an Amazon marketing agency.
Yes.
To help brands succeed on Amazon, because there is this playbook, and we've sold 12,000 units in our first year of our new product ZB just on Amazon in the UK, just to prove product market fit.
Wow. Okay. Amazing. We definitely want to talk about these other ventures, and I guess the pearl of wisdom there as well that I'm taking away is like going to where the market is, right? Like instead of trying to build it yourself and getting people to come to you, like go to them. And the other thing is like the infrastructure. Like not only have you got the eyeballs, but the logistics, the whole operational side to the business, that a humongous giant, you can help you get there. All right, so we're going to talk about your other ventures, but closing on the Trunki journey, one of the highs I wanted to touch on was I read that you were so successful that you managed to acquire your own factory and therefore create this like vertical supply chain operations. What was that about? What even gave you the idea to buy your own factory, and like what's the story there?
Well, the idea wasn't to buy a factory, it was to just reshore production, because making things out in the Far East, you've got an incredibly long lead time, you've got to invest a huge amount of stock. I mean, I remember in the earlier days when we were really successful and we were like £5-6 million turnover, and it's great being a paper millionaire with no money in your bank account and struggling to make the payroll each month. And we went into the warehouse and it was just full of stock. So all the cash had gone into building this massive amount of inventory, because the pace of our growth, like no retailer could forecast for that growth or even see it coming. So we were always playing catch up and always having to buy more and more stock. Then the exchange rates kept fluctuating. There were loads of big swings with like 2009. Where the dollar massively appreciated against sterling, and all of a sudden we were making no margin selling our products to the retailers. And it was just a real lack of control. so many moving parts. So I kind of really wanted to be able to make Trunki closer to home. We put out a national tender and found a company who were really competitive, and they basically were quoting for the same as our landed costs from China. So taking the shipping costs, because we're quite a large product, there's a couple of dollars for shipping per unit and the duty, and they were about the same price. So that made total sense to me to then reshore production. To achieve that price, we had to re-engineer the product. So the Chinese made Trunki had 30 metal screws and pins that held it together. And the UK one, we had to completely re-engineer it to take out all the metal. So it had no metal in it at all. All the parts just snap fitted together. So it was much quicker to assemble. It got rid of all the metal, which is a bit of a safety risk for children, and also helped us create a 100% plastic product that was much easier to recycle. So it kind of ticked lots of my goals. And we started producing down in Totnes, actually, originally then. Plymouth, the factory moved to upscale its production facility to take on our business and another brand. And my PR vision was to have Trunkis with the Union Jack rolling off the production line. This is 2012. We had the London 2012 Olympics. So we secured a low-cog license, had official Olympic Trunkis rolling off the production line, and had every TV network, back then it was Channel 4, ITV and BBC, filming them roll off the production line. So big tip, what a result.
Oh, what a clever marketing tactic.
And then throughout that year, the factory really struggled to keep up with demand. We gave them really clear forecasts. They always delivered short. There were big gaps in our production. We couldn't completely transfer everything from China to the UK. So we had this mixed message about, we couldn't really shout from the rooftops about everything was made from the UK, because some of it was still coming from China, because they weren't able to ramp up production properly. And at the end of 2012, I was invited to a meeting in London with the factory MD, and he told me they're on the brink of going into administration. They completely cocked up their supply chain, their ability to produce products. They bit off more than they could chew, and were on the brink of going bust. And I'd invested close to £500,000 in this project, retooling in the UK, and setting up our supply chain. But as a product designer, I'm close to manufacturing. I kind of understand some of the basics, and it just made total sense to me to do a pre-pack, buy them out of administration, save the 40 jobs, and vertically integrate.
Wow.
So I told all my business mates and peers, and they said, don't do it. What are you talking about?
Of course they
This
did.
is biting off more than you can chew. But one good piece of advice was, if you do it, hire a consultant to try and turn it around. Don't get drawn into it yourself. So we borrowed about £250,000 off the bank and acquired them out of administration. £250,000 was working capital to help them turn them around. And then we discovered why it had gone into administration. And that was a simple lesson in leadership. So the night shift would just produce scrap all night, because they just didn't like the people who used to run the factory. So they'd just been wasting money. And no one really liked the leaders down there, the old owner who had done an MBO. So kind of listening to the team down there, we ended up having to move out the old owner. And to me, it was like, we've got to find what people are passionate about. What can we hang above the door to get people's real buy-in and talking to everyone? It was just, they were simply proud to be making in the UK. So we put that above the door and then started turning this sinking oil tanker, I liken it to, in the right direction. It took 2 years, and yes, that consultant stayed there for 18 months rather than their initial 6-week contract. So it was a real challenge to turn it around. But we turned it around, vertically integrated it, and then with e-commerce sales booming, we were manufacturing them in Plymouth, moving them next door to our warehouse and shipping them directly out to mum in the UK and across Europe.
So not only are you building this already wildly successful children's luggage brand, but you're also managing this turnaround of a new...
Managing a turnaround manager.
Yeah,
so,
okay.
Yeah,
but
it was a huge amount of stress and strife.
Yeah.
But yeah, we kind of achieved it, and then it was a great... So through Brexit, where the sterling massively depreciated, we were able to be very, very competitive with our pricing.
Yeah.
And then through COVID, where sales dropped off a cliff, literally 70% drop in sales for 2 years, we had to go into hibernation. But then when people were able to travel, we were able to turn the taps back on. We didn't have 120-day lead times from China, and we were able to meet that ramp up in demand very quickly.
Much more control over the situation.
So it did pay dividends. However, when it came to exiting, no one wanted to touch the factory. So we had quite a bit of interest, but the factory was causing a lot of problems for people because they didn't want that responsibility.
Oh, okay. Wow. I mean, it sounds like such a strength, though, to have that level of control and.
That's what I thought, but that's not how most businesses are structured. So no, it was a big challenge, and in the end, the acquirer, we did a deal where the operations manager of the acquirer was so impressed by the factory, he quit his job there, bought the factory office, and that kind of made that work.
Separated into two different businesses again. Rob, what a story. Oh my God, I had no idea. And again, it just goes to show these setbacks that have been completely reframed and how you've come out the other side so much better off for it. I had to ask you, just rewinding a sec to that moment when your friends and family were like, no, don't do it. It sounds like a terrible idea. Did that motivate you even further, or did that kind of make you sort of look at things a bit more sensibly?
It was a bit like a Dragon's Den moment where I couldn't relate to what they were saying. It made total sense in my head, and I accepted their challenge, but it was like, but it makes so much sense.
This is clearly where like the entrepreneur gene is very different to the normies out there. Well, I'm very glad you went ahead with it, because I mean, I can only imagine how incredibly stressful that whole situation was, but it sounded like you guys
a huge amount of pride to have ran a factory down there for 10 years, employing, we got up to about 50 people there. So the whole business was about 80 at peak. And
incredible. So you mentioned the exit, and this is how I wanted to obviously wrap on the amazing Trunki story here. So you already mentioned that they weren't interested in the factory, which again, I can't understand, but that's why I'm not in mergers and acquisitions. What was the path like to exiting? Were you looking to exit? Did someone approach you? And what were the things that surprised you most about that experience?
Well, the naive initial plan was 3 to 5 year timeline.
Right.
And it was 18 years before we exited. But we got private equity backing in 2013, so we raised £4 million to really help kind of grow the business, and then the exit horizon was again 3 to 5 years. So we were talking to a lot of people over a period of time, but it was never quite right. And then COVID hit, and we had 2 years of a huge challenge to get through. We just survived, and after that, it was like, I've sold 5 million suitcases around the world. We're in 100 countries. It's done really well in some markets. I was struggling to see what I could do next.
Yeah, that makes sense.
With the brand, and after 18 years, it felt like the right time to try something new.
Yeah, and how poetic as well that it was like 18 years, right? It's almost like that coming of age, like time to leave home. And what surprised you about the experience of selling your business?
Well, we ran a competitive tender, which is always helpful, drove price. I then had to sign into an earn-out, and so many people tell me the earn-out is you're going to struggle to make it the whole way.
How long was it for you?
Well, I had a 2-year earn-out, and I lasted 18 months.
Oh, wow.
So, I thought, no, I'll go in with this with eyes wide open.
Yeah.
I'll be very amenable and adaptable, and I'll try and make it work. And I did, but the chaos that ensued with our integration was just mind-blowing.
Wow.
So it was a really challenging integration, and where my job description literally been integrate your business into our team. Their team just didn't have a clue what they were doing with regards to doing anything outside of Amazon. So it then became a full-blown general manager role.
How did that affect you, having sold your business? You kind of passed over those reins, but you're still involved. So you've still got that sense of ownership. You've still got that pride, that connection, but you're no longer running the show.
Well, it was challenging because you knew what you needed to do, and you would just do it, but you couldn't just do it. You had to write a business plan to get it approved. And then even writing a business plan, they couldn't decide necessarily whether to approve it or not. So it was just like banging your head against the wall. Wow, so after 18 months, it was time to give the head a break.
And oh, Rob, that sounds so frustrating.
But I did learn a couple of things when I was there. They were very, very much a techie business, trying to get tech to do absolutely everything.
Right.
which caused a lot of the challenges. But they were really embracing AI, so that kind of opened my eyes a bit to that, along with my brother's use of it. So I started really learning about how to use it. So that was one big learning. And then the other one was, I couldn't believe this company that acquired us are called an Amazon aggregator, which basically means they were looking to buy successful brands on Amazon, put them into their back end and get operational efficiencies, which they were really good at. But they wanted to buy Trunki because we could take them off Amazon and get them into D2C and retail and distribution. But I was amazed, being a product designer and thinking you always have to reinvent the wheel. Some of the products that anyone could buy from a factory in China that had no innovation were doing phenomenal numbers just because of the Amazon flywheel effect. So it really opened my eyes to, you don't actually have to reinvent the wheel. So with my new business, ZP, we thought, actually, let's take an OEM product from a factory, make a few small changes, but really reposition those changes as massive benefits. And
plug it into the Amazon system.
And plug it into Amazon. And that's been phenomenal. And we've been able to create a brand, do product market tests for about £50,000.
Wow, that's insane. Much more effective than what you get today with Meta ads, as we were saying before. Just to wrap, the final question, well, two final questions on the exit subject. One is, what would you do differently? Would you negotiate just like a shorter earn-out period, or look more stringently at the future acquirers? Like, hindsight's a wonderful thing, so what would you do differently now?
I don't know, there was so much smoke about what they could do. I don't know if you'd be able to see through it. I mean, I'm always asked, what would you do differently? But I think you learn so much from things not working that who knows what mistakes you might make in the future. So I'm very much of the mindset of just go with it, learn from it and move on.
Clearly you have enough resilience to just like pick yourself back up and keep going.
I mean, partly it's a shame that most of the team didn't get to stick around after a period of time, which was always the case. However, they've all gone on to do bigger and better things.
Exactly. The other question I did want to ask you, just related to the exit, is how has that affected you as a founder in terms of like emotionally, your identity? Because I know other amazing entrepreneurs who have exited and they kind of like, oh, what do I do now?
Yeah, it's the classic question when you're whatever it might be, an event, a dinner party, or being interviewed, just like, what do you do? And my answer is, what do I do now? So I played with a few different things. I'm still struggling to answer that, although I'm really getting into one of my new businesses. So that's probably where I'm going to be focusing a lot more of my time. But after exiting, I actually timed it perfectly. My last day at the job as being general manager was the day I got a pair of house keys. So I was then able to transition quite seamlessly into a year of renovating a house and playing with power tools and using my hands again, not being in Excel. So that was great, and that gave me a lot of time to think and reflect. But yeah, having a bit of a portfolio career with running a marketing agency with my brother, doing a lot of inspirational business speaking and keynotes, running my new business ZP, doing a lot of DIY. It's kind of like with these different hats, how do I sum that up in a clear and concise sentence?
And not even in terms of, you know, your byline, as it were, but I guess more just your identity, like the inner psyche of like, oh, I'm now no longer the founder and CEO of Trunki as you were for the best part of 2 decades, right?
Yeah, but I guess because of the brand and the success it had and the awareness it's got, it's kind of that's kind of done and proven, and kind of feel like I've achieved all I could there. So that's
sounds very healthy.
But actually, the other job I've got 3 young kids, so being a very present father.
Nice. I think some people would be surprised to learn that, actually, the fact that you didn't. So correct me if I'm wrong as well on this. You started Trunki before you had any kids. You mentioned you were super young, so I feel like there's this image. It's not explicit, but you know, being this kind of guy having this children's luggage brand, it's like, oh, maybe it was for his kids, or you know, maybe kids gave him an idea. But of course, they came.
Well, actually, it probably was a bit of a surrogate child, because another side effect of CF is infertility for mainly men.
Okay.
So I grew up thinking I wouldn't be able to be a father.
So they were your kids.
So Trunki was my first baby, and that probably was what drew me to doing something in that space. I'm a big kid at heart. I really like kids.
Yeah.
But actually, there was a a question I was asked halfway through my Trunki journey by my business coach, and it's kind of, Rob, why are you doing this? And I could explain why from a business point of view about the mission, vision, values.
Yeah.
But she really kept pressing me on why personally am I doing this?
Yeah.
I'm running so hard in business and just trying to achieve, and use all this energy and drive against the tragedy of losing my sister. I kind of lost sight of why I was doing this personally. What was I trying to achieve?
Exactly.
Where was I trying to get to?
Mm.
So she really forced me to kind of reflect a bit, which I wasn't very good at. I was always looking forward and never looking back.
Yeah.
And it suddenly occurred to me that I did want to start a family. And then I started putting strategies in place, like doing the fundraise with the private equity guys to get some grey hair so I wouldn't have to carry all the responsibility on my shoulders.
Yeah.
And it ended up working part-time in the business, just 3 days a week, and having some amazing time with my now 3 kids.
Yeah. Oh, that's so cute. Well, congratulations on the kids. And that makes perfect sense. You know, this is kind of what I'm really glad that we could peel away some of those layers of the onion, as it were, to get deeper on, you know, why it is tough to build a business, let alone all these setbacks that you've had. So that makes a lot more sense now as to kind of what keeps driving you to do these fun, really children's suitcases. We've spent most of the time obviously talking about Trunki. You've told us a little bit about ZP. I know you've got another business as well. So do you want to share the elevator pitch on the children's sleep product that you're also working on?
Yeah, sure. So ZP was born out of, during COVID, I got really into sleep health. Trunki sales had massively dropped. We kind of had to go into hibernation. So after we kind of did all the financial negotiations with everyone we owed money to, it was then kind of learning. I was then really passionate about learning about sleep health. I had the 3 young kids at the time who were keeping me up a lot, but also looking at the products in the market. And there's a market leader, which is called a grow clock, that kind of tells kids with colour and stars when to get out of bed. But the latest sleep science was saying blue light was bad, and this thing was blue at night and very bright. And me and my brother were talking about this kind of market opportunity, but also if we did a product, I was very keen to try and merge technology and media in some sort of way. And rather than having a reading book, we felt there was an opportunity to do a podcast. But I'm dyslexic. I've got no idea how to create content that can really be consumed. But then we started leaning into AI, and that became a superpower, and it opened up a whole world to content I could create using AI to sense check everything. And it became really incredible that we could kind of ask AI, okay, we want to create a really, you understand the latest child psychology. Now, how can we feed that into creating a really meditative, calming bedtime story? So like the ability to craft all these things into something was just phenomenal. And we created an incredible story that seemed to work. We couldn't use AI narration at the time because it wasn't quite there, so we used a human narrator who was just amazing and created these incredible podcast stories that are actually sending the parents to sleep as well as the kids.
Yeah, I can imagine. Way faster than the kids.
And
right?
we just thought we'd give that a go. We did a sleep guide for parents. So rather than just having a physical product, we wanted to educate parents, get kids in the right mindset for sleep, and then have a product that helped guide them when it was time to sleep and wake up. So that all started working, and the podcast has actually become a real success. We had 1,000 downloads last week.
Amazing.
And then leaning into AI again, it's like, well, let's see what AI narration can do now. And it still can't quite do the story narrative, but one of the platforms can actually dub your content. So we started playing around with translations, and yeah, the dubbing content actually keeps the pacing and the soundtrack and keeps everything aligned. And we can now launch our podcast in French, German, Spanish, Italian.
Nice.
So we've now launched ZP Sommelier, which is the French version, and we'll be launching German.
International success again.
International.
So what have you brought from your Trunki experience to finding product market fit and growing this new business?
I think the big learning from Trunki was around understanding we had 2 customers. We had a parent and a child. Parents wanted the function and utility, but children really want to make friends with their products. I mean, there's stories we had of kids taking their Trunkis to bed and stuff like that. So it was like very important for ZP to have a clear personality, something the kids could really relate to. So we've got initially a cat and a sloth clock, and then the cat and the sloth are characters in our podcast story that you go on journeys with. So really kind of understanding those 2 has been really useful. And yeah, that personality aspect. So it's amazing how it is missing from so many products in the market.
Yeah, amazing. So you've identified a gap in the market, you've come up with this good idea, put it to the test, leveraging AI and advanced technologies to be able to kind of, tinker with the product and then kind of get it out there and see how people react to it.
Yeah.
Are you doing anything to push it? What are the channels that are working for you?
For sales or?
Yeah, promoting it.
Well, it's mainly Amazon again. So Amazon, the closed ecosystem, we know how to really play that game.
Yeah.
That's done phenomenally well. And we're just launching in France now. Then it'll be Germany, Spain, Italy, and then the US after the Trump tariffs die down a bit.
Yeah.
So yeah, but the eureka moment with the narration type tools was actually, rather than just being a product business, we can be an international publishing house, a media house.
Yeah.
So that was really exciting.
Always
But not the gem of the idea initially. So it's just
Yeah.
giving it time to breathe, see what happens, what really gets
See how it
traction, and then doubling down
Yeah.
into those areas that are wide open for opportunity.
A true entrepreneur that's always kind of looking for the next thing and building on those opportunities. One audience question that I have to pose to you is, why did you never make Trunki suitcases for adults?
There's a slightly bigger story behind that. So
Oh,
initially it was all about use your energy wisely, focus on where you can really influence the market. And for us, it was doing children's travel gear, not children's toys and not adult luggage. But our most common request was, when are you going to do one for adults?
oh, really?
I really couldn't see, adults wanting, they might like the idea, but I really didn't think there was volume in
Actually do
a
it.
large adult suitcase. However, we did think there was complete sense for a tween trunkie. So most kids grow out their trunkie between 6 and 7.
Yeah.
I mean, they grow out of it earlier than that, but they have such a bond with the product. They keep using it.
Yeah.
So we thought there was an opportunity for like an 8 to 12-year-old product.
Right.
And we had all these kids who had grown out of the trunkies. Clearly, there was an opportunity. So we created a sub-brand called Journey. We didn't want to associate it with Trunki. And we created this incredible product that I'm still really proud of, called Journey, that was a hard-molded, larger trolley bag. A couple of insights there were kids were getting really into their tech, so it had a tech pouch to keep all their tech.
Yeah.
It was still a sit-on product, but not ready to ride. They could glide in the queue,
Yeah.
be glued to their phones.
Right.
And it would also double as like a bedside cabinet and kind of have that upright position.
Okay.
So we launched it on Indiegogo. We had a really powerful campaign. I think it was close to 250 quid, £250,000 raised. Hit that first production. But then when we started finding out who was actually buying our product, it was international business travellers and not tweens. And we designed it to be really cool. I remember the mood boards were about night trainers, iPads and all that kind of stuff. Things tweens aspire to.
Yeah.
But actually we made it too cool and adults were buying it, but it was only £80. They're expecting an adult quality product, but it was built for kids.
Yeah.
It was bordering toy and luggage. So they weren't happy with the quality, but it was a very cheap product
Yeah.
for what they were expecting. But it did really hit a completely different user need of international business travellers.
Who would have guessed?
So we then in this kind of vicious circle of like adults buying it and giving us bad reviews, kids buying it and loving it. And actually maybe licensing could have helped us a bit there. We could have done a Harry Potter one or whatever, made it really clear that it was for a certain demographic.
Yeah.
But the other challenge we had was a very small marketing team of just 2 people. We knew how to market to mum. We were trying to learn how to market to tweens, but we weren't getting it. We're taking our eye off the ball with our marketing to mum. And it was just a stretch too far.
Yeah.
Like, we really didn't understand that market.
Too thinly spread. That makes sense.
And yeah, the board said, look, we're going to have to can the product. We had a couple of teething problems with it as well. I was like, didn't you watch Dragon's Den? But yeah, we had to can the product. It was a huge amount of time, effort and investment into this incredible product that didn't quite fit.
Wow. Well, I was not expecting that story on that question, but I'm even gladder that I asked it. I mean, yeah, lesson there, like, don't spread yourself too thinly, but also it's a challenge to position something correctly. We talked about this with even Trunki and the toy category and the luggage category, and even with this on the age, that kind of in-betweeny as well. I know that Tony's Chocolonely, they amazing, phenomenal brand, love them, but I know that they kind of struggled with that too, because it's bright, it's colourful packaging, but then they do these things that are a little bit more kind of adult oriented, grown up with the mission and everything. So they've had a few kind of, well, at least one PR crisis that I'm aware of that's kind of where that misunderstanding has kind of led them.
Although I think PR crises are actually great opportunities for brand awareness.
No bad press is bad.
There's no such thing as bad publicity, and you can really lean into it.
Right. Well, very consistent with the story, right? As you would say that. Rob, my traditional closing question on this show is, what's one tragedy that's taught you an unforgettable lesson? Now, we may have already covered this, of course. I don't think anything can compare to losing your sister. Is there anything else you want to share as we wrap here?
No, but I guess just that is the founding drive I have, and just really embracing the reality that we're not here for that long. Some less than others, but it really isn't that long. So make the most of your time. Stop procrastinating. Stop listening to the naysayers. Just stop listening to all the things that are stopping you from getting out there and starting to build something that really matters.
Fantastic note to end this on. That was a real mic drop moment. Rob, thank you so much. That was amazing. Really appreciate you coming on the show. And thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this, you know what to do. Please hit that subscribe or follow button wherever you're listening to this. It really does mean a lot to me, honestly. So appreciate it, and hopefully see you next time.